Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Bryant Balcom here with publisher Andrew Jones from Little John Coliseum in Clemson, South Carolina. We are back for another edition of Three Things, this time following UNC's 85-65 loss at Clemson, a game that, quite frankly, UNC needed for its NCAA tournament resume, a chance. Clemson had a big win over Duke, had a 3-overtime game against Georgia Tech last week, short turnaround. It had the makings and gave UNC its best chance to pull off that upset, but AJ, it didn't turn out that way. And for the first 10 minutes, UNC, while they were shooting over 50%, they hung in there. They were up 23-21 with just over 9 minutes remaining in the first half. It seemed like they'd weathered that storm Clemson had from three-point range, albeit they were open looks that they were knocking them down. But then Clemson just kind of flexed its muscles and proved it was a better team, finishing the first half on a 28-10 run, which included 5 3-pointers, and it just went downhill, and it went downhill fast, AJ.
Yeah, we've seen this before. The Heels played fairly well. They weren't good defensively. We have a photo on maybe my column of Locken's, one of his 3-pointers, and there are 3 Tar Heels about 5 feet away in the picture. They're the closest ones to him. Hubert said after the game that they were setting the screens, they were getting low in the screens, and they couldn't get out and recover on them. Like, they did not contest any of those threes. He had 15 threes in the season coming in. He hit 4 in about a 10-minute stretch, 8-minute stretch.
It was just the second time in his –
It kept Clemson in the game because I thought Clemson took a while for them to kind of get lubed up, because this game started less than 48 hours after the Duke game ended. And I know that talking to some of the Clemson media, that Brad Brownell was treating this like an NCAA tournament scenario where you have a big game one day, you get a big win, you got to cut the cord to it and move on to the next one 2 days later. And that's what they had here. It doesn't get any bigger than Duke and Carolina coming into this building. This game was so lopsided that Clemson people were leaving. We were told Clemson was going to storm the court if they beat Carolina, because they don't beat them very often. But they do now. They have been a little bit more lately. Brad's won twice in the last 5 years in Chapel Hill. The only wins ever in Chapel Hill for Clemson. So as far as tonight goes, it's 28-10. Clemson run to close the first half in a span of 9-23. Clemson at 12 of its last 15 shots from the field. You can say that they were hot hitting threes. You can say they got a couple of rolls, but okay, then they're 10 for 15 if 2 of those bounce that rim out. They were getting open shots. Hubert said they were running dummy offense, and they were. Carolina was atrocious defensively. When that run started, one of the things that I sensed tonight that I also sensed at Cameron Indoor 9 days ago was when Duke started that run that turned out to be 33-7, which ended the game in the first half, you could see Carolina just almost wilt. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, they're playing and they're running stuff and they look athletic, and if you squinted, you might not know the difference between that and a competitive situation, but they weren't. I mean, they didn't. They're slow defensively. They don't close out. Don't take that extra effort sometimes, that extra whatever you have to dig into and find. Offensively, the screens were terrible. They didn't get anything going on offense. They didn't get Clemson, as I said, lead into this game. They're so good at making you uncomfortable running your sets. And Carolina's bad running sets anyway. And we've seen so often over the last few years, especially this year and 2 years ago, that when Carolina sets break down, it's helter-skelter. It's do whatever you do. And Clemson makes you uncomfortable. So this was a terrible matchup coming in for Carolina. I thought Clemson could play a C game and still win, and maybe still win comfortably, because it's just a lousy matchup for the Tar Heels. They're also a really good team. But the Tar Heels on paper shouldn't be 20 points worse than Clemson. The Tar Heels on paper shouldn't allow a 28-10 run in which they look feeble. They look meek and meeker during that period. It's almost as if one of the questions I was asked of Hubert and a few players, they would storm back earlier in the year when they got these situations, but it's almost like they don't have the same fight anymore. Like, it's gone. And Hubert denied when he was asked. He said, no, I rejected the notion. So I asked him a question I don't think he fully understand. I asked him if he thought they were broken, because they played so many tough games, they've had a lot of close games, and they've gotten routed. They've played 4 teams this year I can absolutely see in regional finals, or I would say they've played 6. Auburn routed them. Alabama routed them. Duke routed them. Clemson routed them. Florida pulled away like 14-0 run, and beat them. And the other one was UCLA. Carolina beat them. UCLA's been really good lately. Maybe Louisville, if they get super hot and brackets break down, maybe they can get to a Sweet 16.
Maybe Michigan State. They had them.
Yeah, maybe Michigan State. Michigan State too. I should say they're certainly a Sweet 16 type of team, but they also dominated Carolina in overtime. So, but now they're getting run out earlier. If you look at their recent wins, 1 point at home over Pitt. Pitt missed a shot. Credit Carolina. We talked about them having that desperation, playing with desperation. I said they needed to bottle it and bring it to Little John. It wasn't here tonight. It was there at the end of Pitt, but that's also Pitt. Then before that, their most recent win is at home in overtime against Boston College, which is a train wreck and going to fire its coach. Then in the ACC season, they have the Elliott Cadeau 4-point play and Marcus Burton missed layup at Notre Dame. And they survived there. Notre Dame's not any good. Then they have NC State, where you get the Washington dunk and then the Washington block, and they survive. NC State hadn't won since then. And they survived that. So the teams that they're beating – now they did beat SMU pretty good. Give them that. That's one of their best – maybe their best performance this year. And UCLA was pretty good in the second half. And they waxed Cal, Cal's not any good.
No.
So they've been pretty good a few times. But they've mostly been pretty bad because if you're barely beating the bottom of an ACC that's worse now than at any time in my lifetime.
Yeah, it's an historically bad ACC.
Historically bad. Then you're just not good. But we try to find positives. Like Saturday, so let's just go positive. Let's find the positives because they dug down, they had a little extra reserve, and they got it done. That scramble for the ball, that mad dash for the ball. Hey, they fought. That wasn't here tonight. When Clemson went on its run, I think I've used this analogy before. I'm going to use it again. I used to have a Brittany Spaniel named Murray, named after the great Eddie Murray, baseball player. My girlfriend at the time, she had a brother who had a pit bull named Bo. I'll never forget when we took Murray to go to her brother's house, and the first time he met Bo, he's all happy. He gets out of the car. He sees Bo. He rolls over on his back and says, "Kill me." I'm not saying Carolina rolls over on its back, but you can see it change. If you've seen this team in person enough like I have, when a team starts to hit you, like they don't hit back. They wobble and go back like that, and by the time they regain, halftime saved them.
Yep.
Halftime saved them. If it wasn't for halftime, that thing could have just kept going and going and going. They scored, Clemson scored 28 points in 9 minutes. That's pitiful.
It's like the quick run in the Duke game. I think it happened so fast. Of course, the second half was, we'll talk about it in a sec, was more of the same. But those runs that they let up, it's not, over 10 minutes they gave up 14-4. Like it's a run that happens over the course of. It's quick. They get punched 2-3 times, and before you know it, go from up 2 to down 16 at halftime. It's quick, and I feel like it compounds and just turns.
Let's go to Pitt 2 weeks ago. Carolina's up 10, and in 49 seconds, Pitt has an 8-0 run. So it's not just tonight and Duke. You could almost excuse giving up big runs on the road against those teams because I can see both of them in the Final Four. Clemson's got the ability to make a run. Okay, but they give up this crap to Pitt. They gave up runs to BC. They go through stretches where there's no connection out there. And there's nobody smacking. We always talk about fanny smackers. I haven't even bothered asking about that this year, who the fanny smackers are. I remember asking Hubert a couple of years ago. He started laughing. Fanny smackers, they don't have any. Now, I think that there's a couple of guys, one in particular, Seth Trimble. I think Seth Trimble's got some of that makeup, but he just hasn't reached that point. And I think they're so far into the season now where guys are maybe doubting themselves or doubting what's around them, and they play like a team that doubts itself. That's why they don't push back real hard whenever they get punched. It takes them a while. It took Clemson being a little bit the first several minutes of the second half, and Carolina's got the thing down to about 16, and then boom, 14-4 run, game over. Yep. Led by 26 a couple times. I mean, Clemson had walk-ons on the court, and Ian Jackson and Drake Powell out there.
And you mentioned that 14-4 run, and earlier it brings my second point of that run specifically, which cemented the game. In the past, UNC, anytime you can point to Dayton, Florida, UCLA, Michigan State, you name it, they taken those punches. Yeah, Kansas, yeah, perfect example. The second half, they looked defeated at points, but they punched back. They made that run that, maybe they didn't end up winning the game, but the outcome was still in doubt. They put themselves in positions to win those games. And tonight, 16 points at halftime deficit. It was 16 a couple minutes in the second half, like you said, and that 14-4 run that Clemson went on just was the nail in the coffin. And that was 74-48. At that point, it was just seemed like just deflated was probably the best word to describe it.
Brian, those comebacks you mentioned, Kansas, Michigan State, they were down big there. They were down big Dayton, Florida, UCLA. Let's focus on those five. None of those games were in Chapel Hill. They were okay playing away from home. They were unfazed by Allen Fieldhouse. The last two times they've been on the road against good teams in their buildings, when runs started, they look like a team that can't play on the road. So if you snapshot parts of November, when they were bad, they'd followed up with being unbelievable. Same thing in December. Now they're just bad. They don't follow it bad with unbelievable. And that's why Hubert and some players were asked if the fight's gone. That's why I tried to follow up on the fight question when Hubert rejected the notion by asking if they're broken. They look broken to me. They look like a team that at times, there aren't enough timeouts that can be called to get them reset. It's almost like you need the other team to miss a few shots, get a few runouts, and suddenly they got a little energy. They got some steals today, but the game was way over.
Yeah, the press, the last couple buckets with steals from press, it was a formality at that point.
Pardon me, I'm coughing because I am water free right now, so they're not really good at providing a lot of water here at Clemson. Like a few other, I had that problem with Memphis back in the exhibition game. So really, we got to ask what this means, right? We always talk about what it means. We're at a point. I said the other day, I didn't think Clemson was a must-win game, but it was a must-compete game.
Yep.
So
you could afford a one possession loss and being competitive, and this was.
I mean, if you lose 77-69, and you're competitive through the rest of the game, the committee won't put a black mark next to this loss. Now they put a black mark next to it. They put a black mark next to it because Carolina was terrible tonight. And they're getting very close to having to win the ACC tournament to get in. Some of us, there were about 6 members of the media here covering North Carolina. A couple of players were asked about that, about resume and needing to win. And the guys are like, they're at the point now where they're not even talking about that. They just got to figure out how to get right. They got a tough game coming up Saturday. A lot of teams wouldn't go into Syracuse saying it's a tough game. This team goes into Syracuse with us saying it's a tough game for them. It's not a great matchup. Syracuse has a lot of length. I don't know who on this team guards J.J. Starman. And if you sell out to him, Eddie Lampkin could cause problems for them because he's big and he can pass and he's got a little DJ Burns in him. DJ gave Carolina trouble. They've got dudes that can shoot threes. They're not a good team, but it's on the road. And this team has got to be questioning itself at this point. And if they go lose that one, and I said a couple weeks ago, I thought they might lose these next 3, bottom out at Syracuse, and they'd be 13-13. Well, they escaped Pitt. But now they got to go to Syracuse. But more than that, I mean, what do you do in practice? They'll have tomorrow off. They'll practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What are they going to do? What's Hubert going to do? Does he reinsert Ian Jackson into the lineup and say, hey, we need you to score? Ian hadn't scored for 7 games. Well, did once. He had a 7-game stretch, Bryant. Everybody knows this, where he was at 18 or more points for all 7 games. He averaged 22.7 points a game. Hubert was asked tonight, what's wrong with Ian, basically. Oh, guys go through stuff like that, but we don't, the evaluation of him helping the team win games is not just his scoring, it's all the other things, which he doesn't do those other things very well. He is a scorer. You put Ian Jackson on the floor to get your damn buckets, right?
And you can excuse some poor defense if you're getting the production on the offensive end that he can provide.
Yeah, and you know what? Most guys, when they're making shots, play a little better on defense anyway. If anybody's ever played basketball at a decent level, you're always a little more amped up defensively when you make a shot. You usually hit the floor after you make a shot, not after you miss a shot. And Ian is human, like most people. He would be that way. But in that 7-game stretch, he averaged 22.7 points a game. He was 18 or plus every game, over 20 in 6 of them. In the 7 games since then, he's averaging 7.2 points a game. He scored 52 points in the last 7 games. He had 18 against BC. So if you remove that and those other 6, he's averaging 5.7 points. He has no field goals in the last 2 games. He had 3 free throws very late. I didn't think he was going to go back in the game. I wrote he had consecutive scoreless games, but then he went in with 1:32 left to hit 3 free throws. No field goals in the last 2 games from your best your best scorer. Mm-hmm. He had already proven that. He moved to the 4. I thought that took him away from his game because he's standing in the corner all the time instead of being up top and getting a chance to make plays. When he's driving and scoring, that 3 is going to be a little more open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's missing threes now. He's missing threes now. He's missing everything. He was 0 for 8 tonight from the floor. He was 0 for 3 against Pitt, and he just doesn't look comfortable. He's young enough that it has to have gotten into his head too, because he had 22 minutes the other night. He had 16 tonight. The offense is challenged. They've scored 71 or fewer points in 8 of their 13 ACC games. If you take away the BC game, this team's averaging around 69 points a game in the ACC. I've been telling you all for a long time, it's not a great offensive team, and we see that. But you got a dude that can get you buckets. And I don't understand. I know young guys go through struggles, but he looks like a completely different dude out there on the floor now. People out there that are saying, oh, Ian's quit on the team. No, he's going through a funk, but I don't know what's been done to help get him out of the funk. I can't pinpoint, say that they're running these sets for him. He's just not getting off screens. I don't remember the last time it was a screen set for him. And I say this, I know people say sometimes we get overly critical here, but we have no choice but to. He has 52 points in the last 7 games. He's attempted 14 free throws in the last 7 games. He averaged 5.9 free throws in the 7-game stretch beforehand. That's a result of a guy driving. That's a result of a guy percolating on offense. That's a result of a guy playing with confidence and saying, this is my ball, my game. That's my basket. Guard me. That's been non-existent other than the BC game. And nobody guarded in the BC game. That was terrible. So that's a big problem because they not only have to get right, but they got to get right when their most talented scorer is in a whirlwind right now. And it's February 10th. There's 7 regular season games left.
And then you mentioned
Bryant, this isn't going in the right direction.
Not at all. And like I said, we mentioned coming into this game on the 3 things on Saturday, like this seemed to be a chance for UNC it seemed to be the perfect storm for a chance to have a performance against Clemson, and it just was not there. And then you mentioned Ian's slump, and the particular point in the second half, I can't remember exactly. The game was well in hand, and he played
early for about 5 minutes. He went in at the 14-22. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but he went at the 4. I was charting everything he was doing. He went like the 14-22 mark for the first time in the second half, played 8 minutes in the first half. And then he went out and came back in and played the last minute 32. I just wanted to clarify so people might know the range of the game that we're part of the game.
Yeah, there are two moments in that I really. I mean, we had talked about he's been in something. There were two moments this game in particular that I really realized that it had clearly gotten into his head. It was the first half. The game, I believe UNC was either winning or down by 1 or 2, and going for a defensive rebound, Ian Jackson had the chance, balled right there in front of him, and took one hand, just try to scoop it and run, and led to an Ian Shefflin off the rebound and basket. And in the second half, he drove to the basket, just did not have a good angle on a shot. Was not anywhere close to having a chance to make a high percentage shot attempt, and it made it halfway to the basket, almost at the side of the backboard, and you could just tell, just deflated. And I 100% agree that when you have your best scorer playing the way he is, whether it's because they're not running offense for him or whatever the case may
be, he's way out of position.
It's
playing the 4 when he has no business playing the 4.
And I guess that's part of the reason they did with Clemson's matchup. You had to change the starting lineup tonight too. That's another note. But him putting him in the corner is not going to do anything for this offense. And even if the threat of him driving opens up so much for this offense, whether it's RJ off the ball or even Drake Powell has been prone to hit 3 for this team as evidence against Pitt. But just even the threat of him when he's on offensively helps this team's offense tremendously. And it's shown with them not reaching the 70-point mark except for Boston College that there's no coincidence that his poor performances coincide with UNC's poor performances offensively as well.
Yeah, but you mentioned the starting lineup. Hubert said he started Withers, that he needed more size for rebounding, and he specifically noted Ian Shefflin, so Withers would be on Shefflin. Shefflin had 10 rebounds, Withers had 3. Clemson out-rebounded Carolina by 13. Clemson grabbed 15 of their 32 misses, which is 46.5%, 47%. And the Tigers had 16 second-chance points. So they were at a point plus per offensive rebound, which is where you want to be, and they grabbed nearly half their own misses. So it didn't work. We all know what this team doesn't have. The problem is that we know what it does have at times and what it appeared to have a lot more in November and for a while in December. And it's like it's gone. They haven't – when was the last time they played well?
In my opinion,
Cal,
I would say
Cal was the last time they played well.
Cal, yeah.
They played well against Cal. Yeah. They played well against SMU.
And, yeah.
That's it.
The Stanford game, to me, in my eyes, is that was when
Jacob
you expected that's when the things just completely flipped. That's
what Jacob says. Kudos to Jacob Turner from Bryant and me. Jacob, he likes the stinky word. He probably shouldn't use. I'm not a big fan of that word because it's worse than stinky right now. But Jacob said that day. He said that was it. So I mean, we could talk more and more. Jacob and I'll do a show on Wednesday. We have football press conference on Tuesday, believe it or not, in 13 and a half hours. 13 and a half hours. This team's in trouble, man. I mean, they're not just in trouble. I mean, I'm not even making the tournament. We were talking up there on press row. We got to sit pretty high up here, but it's a great place to watch a game, so it's not an issue. What are the games left? Can you see them being locked to win any games that are remaining? And I threw out Miami, and someone's like, well, what if Matthew Cleveland goes off? I mean, if they barely beat BC, they can barely beat Miami. I have a feeling that Miami might be able to get that one. But can you see them losing any? I'm not going to say all of them. That's not right. But moving forward, Syracuse, I can see them losing Syracuse. I think they're going to lose Saturday. Coming home against State, State's terrible.
Yeah.
State will look how State played at Duke.
State won't roll. They won't roll over. That's for sure.
No, they'll be ready to go. Virginia's playing better now. They're shooting the 3. Carolina's opponents in the last 5 games are 49 for 102 from 3-point range. It's 48%. So, of course, Virginia's going to get some open looks. And then they got to go Where they got
Virginia
to go to
Tech.
Florida State, all that length. Then they come home, play Miami. Then they go to Virginia Tech, who's playing better, Castle Coliseum. They hate Carolina. And then Duke comes in. And then they'll probably play Wednesday in the ACC tournament against one of these kinds of teams they've been struggling with. So if they win, they go to Thursday and play a team that's much better. That's what's left. There are no indicators that suggest this team's going to play beyond Wednesday or Thursday of the ACC tournament.
Yep, and we talked about this 4-game stretch where it's Pitt, Duke, Pitt, Clemson. That this was, for lack of a better term, probably the defining moment of kind of the direction of this ship is going to go. And they go 1-3 in that stretch, with that one win being a 1-point win that easily could have been.
They missed 2 friends of a 1-1 in the last 19 seconds. I mean, it's not fair to say they tried to give it away, but they didn't polish that win. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there was
no polish on that win. They got the win.
Nothing convinced me. Yeah, agreed. Nothing convinced me. Wow, that that this was going in a different direction, or that things were heading in the right direction. And I think that's just 1-3 in that 3-game stretch. 2 of those just being, I'll say, probably non-competitive, and a majority of those, they, for 30-plus minutes at Duke, a little less than 30 minutes today, where they just weren't competitive basketball team. And like you said, Syracuse up next, another. I mean, UNC, we saw last year that they lost at Syracuse, a place that has given them fits at times. And
Jacob and I will talk a lot more Wednesday.
Yeah.
We'll dive into some stuff. I'll do some drops this week. And we do have football Tuesday. So for all you Carolina fans that are in pain right now, we actually get some access. So you probably should. We get Michael Lombardi, not Belichick. So you should at least be excited about that. I know we are.
Yep. And AJ, you got a quick trip back to Chapel Hill here shortly. So safe travels to you, and see you guys Saturday. The UNC takes on Syracuse. I'm Bryant, and he's AJ.
Thanks.